Okay, welcome to a Sunday live stream. We're going to be talking about some reverb in the songwriting process a little bit, doing some hands-on with that. But as always, if you like these kind of streams, don't forget to subscribe. We do streams on the regular, but rarely with advance warning. So hit that notification bell, and hopefully you'll be able to get notified that we're jumping on. And also, of course, if you're looking for any sort of additional training, there's links in the description about our membership, which we do exclusive bonus content each week, live streams. We have a really amazing group of Logic users who are on that. And there's one-on-one trainings too, but let's just jump into this. I just have the retro synth loaded up. That's where we're going to start. And we'll see kind of where we go with this. Really want to focus on reverb in the songwriting process, which I tend to use reverb as a part of instruments, not as much like when you're doing the mix of a song where you add it in and you have auxiliary sends and buses that go out to reverbs, and you put drums and vocals and instruments in the reverb. So really thinking more along the lines of how do I change my individual instrument sounds to be different through reverb. So we're going to look at some of that. Let's see. I don't have yet anything set in terms of a song, but I'm just going to play a little bit with this instrument. This is just the default patch. I do want to just change the attack a little bit, so that it like kind of builds in slightly. Here's the chords I was thinking. So I'm going to just dial that back slightly. It was a little too much. I just want to take the edge off of that preset. And then to split the difference, because I do like it just ever so slightly more. Okay, cool. So this is the sound. I'm just going to record that in, and then we'll add a little bit of reverb and talk about reverb a little bit. Hey, Jeroen from the Netherlands. How you doing? And I don't have the tempo quite set yet, so I'm just going to do the adapt tempo functionality, and I'm going to add in the capture recording function, so that way I can just do this. Right, so I just played that part. I'm going to hit the capture recording button and see how my tempo is. It's actually right around 120, ironically. So we're going to make it 120, I think, or close. 120.6, probably can change that a little bit more. Come on. There we go. Hold down the control key when you're adjusting the tempo. But that should keep my tempo the whole way through. I just wanted to see kind of where that settled. And we're going to quantize, smart quantize to eighth notes. There we go. And then I missed a couple notes there, looks like. Okay, so that's just the part I want to start with. And hello to Jezza from Australia. Wow, up early. I love early risers. I'm not an early riser. And then Yulan, How you doing? Cool. So we're getting a little crowd here. I like it. So we could, in my thought process, we could just use a bus and send this sent out to a reverb, but that's not exactly what I'm thinking today. I'm thinking more like adding reverb onto our channel strip a little bit, and doing it that way because I really want to make an instrument that's using the reverb. There's a few different things that come along with this. I want to check one thing with the fat effects real quick. I couldn't remember. Okay. It's the step one. I couldn't remember which one of those had the reverb, and this is the reverb one. So this is an example of a few different tools inside Logic where we actually have a reverb built into a bunch of other effects. And so let's do... So let's play that. So we don't always have to reach for Chromaverb or for Space Designer or for any of the other default reverbs. We do have some of them built in. And let's just duplicate this track real quick. And on this one, let's put just one of our other main synthesizer, sampler / magic tools. And let's just initialize the preset. And we'll use the saw wave for a second. So in a tool like this, we have a whole bunch of effects, including acoustic reverb, classic reverb, and convolution reverb. So we can actually load convolution reverbs right into here, which is kind of cool. Including some surround spaces, which I've never really looked into much, but I think it's time at some point to do that. Let's just do a nice large... Let's do a big plate for a second. So that's that sound of that reverb. So a couple things to think about when you're doing this. Because I'm not using auxiliary sends, one of the main ways we get to set our levels with that is by using the dry and the wet knobs. So I can come through here and turn down my dry, and we just have the reverb sound. Or we can leave the dry or the unprocessed reverb sound and just have a little bit of reverb. And of course, with any of these tools, it's real easy to put either a modulator inside something like Alchemy, or if we're using something else like the step effects, then we can just literally really easily put a modulator, and we'll do learn plugin parameter and just click like the wet. And modulate that wet signal however we want. We can slow it down. Just leave it a little higher. Or do more like a randomization, which could always be a little bit fun. So we can control the wet signal and the dry signal independently or as a part of the patch or whatever. So it really just depends on. Let's go back to the original. And let's add something. Let's add like a drum kit or something here. Let's make that just full 8 bars. Okay, so what do we want to do? I don't know if we want to do like this, like acoustic kit. Something's interesting with that original MIDI. Let me do. Interesting. I think when I did the auto tempo, I think it definitely captured it a little bit strangely. But I'm not going to deal with that right now because it does seem to line up a little bit. Okay, so to make it a little tighter, let's do the groove track. I think I'll set the synth as the groove source. And then with this, you'll see the default for the Drum Machine Designer here has this signal chain. It has compressor, overdrive, bit crusher, pedal board, enveloper, stereo delay, reverb, and a channel EQ. So it comes with a reverb already on here, the platinum verb. So we could use that, or we have the pedal board on here at the same time, and I believe we have some sort of reverb on here, although I don't ever really use it. I know we have like these, the echoes. Let me go straight into here for a second. The pedal, stomp boxes. Looks like we might just have I'm looking just to make sure. Just the delays. So we don't have any reverbs, but we have spatial delays, which are kind of nice. But we'll use this reverb here. Yeah, Jeroen. So the chord switches, they were, I think, originally, I played them as measures, but Sometimes when you do the capture recording, I wasn't paying close enough attention to when I did that, but it's like going every other, it's like a bar and a half. It's making it kind of like, well, it's definitely out of time in terms of the feel, which is giving it kind of a polyrhythm type feel with the drums, which I think is actually working really interestingly. So we're going to leave it. So I've added this Platinum Verb, which was already on the Drum Machine Designer preset list, but I put it in. The wet was all the way down, so I turned it up quite a bit. Now, what I like about the Platinum Verb, which is a little different than some of the others, we have a little bit more controls over like an actual physical modeled space, meaning I can do... we have some of these features in the other ones, but I've always liked this one, even though I don't use it all that often. It just comes up sometimes on things like the Drum Machine Designer preset. But this balance between the early reflections and the reverb knob is really interesting. And then we have really clearly, this room size functionality, which again, we have in the other places, but it's just, there's something about the ease of crafting a space that you like with this one, I think is interesting. And then a room shape and a pre-delay, but it's just like all of your basic reverb stuff. So we're gonna let it go for the moment. I tend to reach more for either Chromaverb or Space Designer, but it's kind of interesting to see this one. In terms of reverbs, the only other one I like the end verb, the envelope verb. This one can do things that none of the other ones can easily do, but we're not going to use that one right now. Okay, let's listen again. Jezza says they used to use Platinum Verb's bright, long preset. I know which one you're talking about, I think. Let me actually go in there and look real quick. This one right here, the bright, long verb. For me, so here's kind of what I think about all of these reverbs. Chromaverb is doing stuff now that I think is intelligent reverb design, but it has its own sound to it. Space Designer is really good at mimicking all these spaces, and I'll pull something up on Space Designer in a few minutes. This Platinum Verb, to me, sounds like the period of digital reverbs from when they first started coming out till like the early 2000s. So if I'm going for something that's a little bit more retro, but still really good sounding, this is the sound of like those decades to me. And so there's a reason I'll use this on some retro type drum machines. I'll use this on any kind of ballad thing that has like a piano and some basic strings and a vocal. It's like there's so much to this that has a sound that it's easier to get to than some of the new ones, which are really focused on different things. The modern sound, fitting in easier, or well, in Chromaverb's case, like graphics and looking cool is almost more important than sounding good. But this I get some of those nostalgic sounds of like the 90s, and so in early 2000s. I like it. It's not bad. It's kind of cool. So let's add another part to this. Let's actually pull this one. Or actually, you know what I can do with the alchemy patch is just maintain. Let's pull all the notes except for the bass off. And let's make this our low frequency stuff in Alchemy. So let's hunt. Let's hunt for a preset. Balloon finger. Not yet. Close. Oh, maybe. Not quite. Ooh, that might be a little bit too much, but let's try it. It's too much. Ooh, I like that one. Let's hear that one. So, we never use reverb on bass sounds, right? No, sometimes we do. We can. But I'm not sure. Let's see if the classic one here has what I want. Because I want to use reverb. Big size. Yeah, not that one. Let's use an external one for this. And let's see, we'll use, I feel like since we were talking about, whoa, that is not. That drum machine designer is using an old one. I'd forgotten that it's not, it's in the legacy plugins. Ooh, that's interesting. So room size, room shape, stereo bass, all early reflections for a minute. So what I want is the no reverb and all early reflections of the biggest room that they have. So you end up with, you're enhancing the sound, making it bigger without making the actual reverb longer. It's like being in a huge cathedral with cork walls. And so you end up with stuff that's different. Let's see. Jerome says, how low do you use the sub bass usually? You're talking about like the actual plugin that's like that, or just overall on a mix, how much low frequency do I have? let me know which part of that you were looking at. This is going to be, because of the way that timing is working, that's a little tricky, but let's just split. I don't want that. Yeah, let's do that. Delete. And we'll just loop those out for the moment. Okay. So let's add another instrument. I don't want to have reverb automatically put on there, so I'm going to do patch merging but turn the sends feature off. I talk about this a bit, but if you're new to this concept, patch merging allows us to load library presets but turn off things that get loaded. So I'm turning off the sends. Logic likes to add so many sends if you're loading things from the presets. And then let's do a nice, I think we're looking at nice rich Bosendorfer. Natural reverb to it just in the recording, but I don't know if I like that, but we're going to put it in so I can do some reverb stuff. There was one note at the end I really hated. We'll try that. Okay, so that piano actually has quite a bit of ambience just from when they probably sampled it, which means I'm going to be changing it instantly. See if I can get a drier one with the Steinway. Hated that. Let's go up to we'll just try that. Okay, let me go back to Jeroen for a second. Frequency to make sure it still translates to speakers mixing, or is it not relevant? The name sub-bass suggested is very low. So yeah, I mean, I think that preset did suggest that. Certainly at some point I'm going to be checking, well, let's do that with our multimeter and just looking at what I've got in the low frequencies. I mean, there's some things happening down to 30 and below, but it's not like tons. I probably would still at some point put some sort of EQ here and I start rolling off around 60. I don't need something that's real. This style of music can have a lot of low energy, but you don't want it to be like somebody put it on like here in the United States with a car where they have like a subwoofer set in the trunk, and to have it like be like and just ruin everything. Headphones, most speakers, car speakers, unless they have subs, aren't really going to pick up most of that anyway. And so I would say 75% of the time it matters, but it won't affect anything. And the other 25% of the time you're going to cause somebody some angst if you're not careful. Okay, so let's get a reverb for this piano. So I'm doing all, I don't know if you could tell, reverbs on the actual instruments themselves, which is different than what some people might do. Okay, so let me do, I don't have any of mine loaded up here. We're going to load up something. Let me see. Recall default. There we go. Let's load an impulse response. And I'm going to use one of mine that I've captured in the various places. Let me find it though. Let me see. It's over. Okay, give me a second while I... That's not the right one. I need to find my stereo ones. I use a lot of ambisonic ones, but I swear I have a couple of these. Do 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 do. Huh. Okay, I'll find it in a second. While I'm doing this, I love doing my own impulse responses. As some of you have seen on my channel, I definitely have a bunch of different projects, and I capture these in quite a few different places. I recently was just in Minneapolis, Minnesota, doing some churches there. And I've done a bunch in the Czech Republic and in Austria. And I've done, here we go. Where are you? And done some on Hawaii, which are kind of cool. And a bunch here in Denver. And we're doing more in Denver right now. Okay, I found the thing I'm looking for. So, load IR. I had a few of these stereo ones. We'll do St. Barbara Cathedral. This is in the Czech Republic. Oh, got some weird sounds there. That's weird. So I love long, accurate, wonderful reverbs. This is from a massive cathedral. It's too long for this, but I'm just going to turn the wet signal down and let it kind of hover there. don't like that note. That's the one I wanted right there. Okay. Okay, interesting side notes about putting reverb on the instruments you're actually using. If I pan this track, it's going to pan everything, including the reverb, so they do stick together. Okay, so just fine tuning up the spectrum a little bit there, doing a little EQ. So conceptually, strengths and weaknesses to doing it this way. One is I'm really sculpting instrument sounds rather than a mix at this point. And I like going through and figuring out what these instruments can sound like in various spaces. I mean, that one has the shortest reverb because that's all early reflections, but it's like a massive sound. The first one here, quite a long reverb tail as a part of that Step Effects plugin. The drums has this platinum verb on it, which is a legacy, but it's still there. Must be using a pretty old drum machine designer preset. And then one that just goes on forever. How does it all fit together in the mix? It kind of does and doesn't. Okay, there's a few of you watching. Any questions or specific things you'd like to see, make sure you let me know in the comments, in the chat. I mean, this is just something we threw together in like 10 seconds here. I like it. I kind of like the vibe of this. It sounds a little bit, like Hidden Citizens or something. We should add some more brass and percussion if we really wanted that. We could actually. Some brass might not actually be horrible for this, but let's not use the Logic brass. Let's use some actual brass because we have Hollywood brass diamonds So let's just do, we'll try that one first. That may be too much, but we're going to find out, I guess. Because we're talking about reverbs, we're going to use the built-on reverb of this plugin. It has reverb here. I don't know if I want to. Doo-doo. Little subtle. And we definitely should do just a little bit of widening. Let's make this, the brass, super wide. And then really the only thing we need left would be some sort of vocalist, right? We've got Voices of Passion. Sure, this should work. Let's see what this... I don't know if that's what I wanted or not. Let's do Bulgaria. Nope. India. I don't know if that's going to match the key. Let's find out. Now I need to figure out which one's going to be in the right key signature. Elements. Let's try that. I don't like any of those. Let's do vowels, words. Oh, I could probably program this one. I don't know if I have time. In the right context, that could work. Do our last one here. This time we're actually going to use, turn down the dry quite a bit. That's a nice long reverb on the voice, but I think, it's a textural thing, I think. So overall, if someone brought me a project to mix, and this is what it was like from the minute they gave it to me, and there's like some sort of reverb effect on every single channel, no sends are being incorporated at all, no reverb on auxiliary tracks. My first instinct is always pull all that off and then do reverb as a part of the mix instead of as the individual instruments. And I'm not sure that would be the right thing to do in every case. Partially because I just went through and made all these reverb type sounds specifically for those instruments. I mean, maybe I could still go through and do a unifying reverb for everything. But that's going to cause a lot of different issues because some of these things are going to have then two reverbs and it's going to be confusing to the ear. And so in some ways, we got to embrace this approach to a certain degree and say, you know what, that's okay that everything has a little bit of a different reverb. Let me listen once really critically and see what I would change in the mix process. Okay, I've got a list in my head of things I would be changing in this mix. What those of you who are watching though, in the comments, tell me like the top 2 things that you would change if you were handed this particular. Say this was a whole song, not just this, but if this was a whole song and you were told to mix it, what would you do to actually mix this and make it sound great? Jeroen says, I guess it's with great power comes great responsibility, but if it's a part of the instrument sound, then you should probably not remove it. Okay, so that being said, what's broken on this particular mix right now? What things absolutely have to be remedied to make it sound as it should? Not everybody who writes music and puts things on tracks, not their wishes shouldn't always be respected in the sense that that's what they chose, so that's what we should use. Sometimes inexperience or lack of lack of understanding of how things fit together create lots of sonic issues. So what would you change? High end sounds a little harsh, says Red Guitar. Hey, Red Guitar, how you doing? Jeroen says perhaps there's too much low competing with each other. Anything else, or are those the two main things? I mean, those are often the two main things, but what else is there? So going off those two main things for the moment, one of them when I added that low brass section, I never did actually roll anything off, and I'm going to roll off a little extra on it. I just want the edge of it. I don't want it to compete with anything else in the lows. So with that change to the brass, the only thing right now that has a lot of low frequency is this one. That's the Alchemy sub bass. And I've added extra in with that reverb. So I think I actually might want to just really carefully do this, where I'm going to boost slightly 80 to 100 with the curve here. And then roll off below it. Now, the thing that Red Guitar was saying about the high stuff, I just added and added and added, right? So I never actually dealt with most of it. And I like to boost some things. But I do think in the case of the vocal-ish thing that I got to be careful with it and then the piano. Those two things are really in the same range. Right now the piano's boosted up like this, but because I have the vocal added in, I need to decide which of those things really should shine. But this is the process. It's like I'm going back through and thinking about all the different elements. I just added a bunch in the songwriting process, but that doesn't mean that's how they have to live in the end. Now I have to go through and actually think, how are they fitting together? Which one do I really want to focus? Which one is stepping on the toes of the other instruments? And so that's kind of what the next phase would be if I was really going to do it. Jeroen says the weird thing is I can now not isolate the starting sound anymore. So that is a weird feeling, but perhaps first time listeners will not be aware care. By By starting sound, do you mean how it was when I first did it? Or are you talking about the original, this piece? Anyway, answer that question. I'm going to listen again for a second. Yeah, so the original thing that I did without anything. Yeah, I'm not sure if it matters or not in this case. I think sometimes when I start with something like that, my goal is never to have that actually be the critical sound. Although I do like the sound. But we pretty quickly got away from that. And then it becomes a texture with everything else. And so if we want that to be more of a prominent thing, then we just make a choice to make it so. So we can raise it up a little bit. I think I would probably compress it a little bit. But I'm going to have to do a little bit more drastic EQing of it too. So, and in fact, Jeroen, I think one of the things that you're talking about right now is probably how this song would really make more sense if we did it like this. Let's do... So all of a sudden, instead of having that thing that you're talking about where everything's competing, of course, we're listening to it over and over and over in a short section, but a song would actually be like that. And actually, I want to change the original drums here too. Get rid of everything except for... And sound production and advice, I think you're probably right with that, but I don't want to... I think for this, I'm not going to jump in and actually do a conversion to MIDI and change that around, which you could do. Or I think we're on quick sampler here. I wonder what I could do. Let me hear that by itself. Really what I need to do is get rid of that and make it more of a kick, or go in and actually program the MIDI for it. That's probably what I really should do. So that way that sound is actually going through and changing. Okay, cool. I could just go down a rabbit hole. I think this is a good place to start to wrap this up, though. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I think it's an important thing to talk about, reverb and the place we use it in our songwriting creation tools, but how we also transition from the creative part into the mixing part and how that looks. If you really want your reverb a certain way in the mix, it makes sense to start that way in the creation part. But if it doesn't really matter to you, then do it however you want. There's really no firm rules that you can't break, as long as you understand that at some point you're going to have to really sculpt that sound and do something a certain way with it. Anyway, thanks again. I think we've been going for about an hour. I think it's a perfect time to stop going. Thanks again for watching. And if you're watching all the way to the end, then as usual, you're one of the crazy ones, and you should definitely be subscribed and a member of this channel. So talk to you later.